Okay. Hello, everybody. It looks like most people who are going to be attending are here. I want to thank everybody for coming this evening and thank you for joining this first lecture in the spring 2021 Sam Fox School Public Lecture Series. My name is Martin Lammert. I'm a second-year MFA candidate here at the Sam Fox School. I will be the moderator for tonight, and I wanted to say that it is truly a thrill to have Lisa Lapinski here with us tonight, joining from Houston, Texas. Lisa is the Henry L. and Natalie E. Freund Lecturer in Art this semester. Natalie Edison Freund was an arts supporter and community volunteer and was deeply committed to Washington University and the St. Louis community. Natalie and her husband, Henry Freund, funded the Freund Fellowship Program, a collaboration between the university and the St. Louis Art Museum. Natalie attended Washington University and was a long-term member of the Sam Fox School National Council. And her son, Michael, is also a member of the National Council and is actively involved with the Freund Fellowship Program. And so we want to thank the Freund family, the sponsors of this annual lecture, who make events like tonight possible. Of course, tonight's lecture is via Zoom, and so I would recommend choosing speaker view in the upper right corner if that's not already been done. And feel free to keep your camera on or turn it off. It's up to you. We'd love to see all of your faces. Lisa will be showing slides, and so feel free to leave questions and comments in the chat or the Q&A sections at the bottom of your Zoom panel. And at the end, we will try to answer them, or possibly throughout the lecture, I will interrupt with anything that could be interesting. And now, as our time is limited, it's my pleasure to hand the microphone over to Lisa Lapinski. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy this talk.
So can they see me now?
I believe everybody can see you.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Lisa Lapinski. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. I wore my fox shirt in honor of Sam Fox. Can you see there's all these foxes on it? There we go. I'm going to talk about three things today. I'm going to talk about my life before I was an artist when I was in my 20s. I just sort of thinking it's a good thing for students to hear, just like different types of paths people take. And I think mine is unusual. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Then I'll show my artwork. And then I have starting this organization called Texas Young Artists Resource, called Tiger. And I want to talk a little bit about this organization I've started here in Houston. So those are the three things. And I'm going to do screen share now. Is that right, Martin? I can just, okay. That's crazy. Sorry. I don't see how I play.
Yeah.
Okay. So I graduated from university with a degree in philosophy in 1991. And I went to just like almost on a lark, not a lark, but I didn't really plan it or consider it at all. I just got an airplane ticket and I went to Warsaw, Poland in the middle of winter in 1991. And when I was there, the British Council, which is a cultural organization that's all over the world, they helped me find a job. And I got a job working for a philosophical magazine that was published at the University of Warsaw. And it had been called for many, many years Dialectics and Humanism, but then recently, because of the shipyards and the fall of communism, it was changed. They just very easily changed it to Dialogue and Humanism. I was only making $90, and month there, and it was really hard. I actually was living in a castle. It was like an apartment building that had been turned into a castle that had been turned into apartment buildings, but I had like a small room I was renting from this woman called Pani Bajuk. And so I had to get a second job. And the second job I got was up in Elbląg, Poland, which is up near Gdansk. And I got a job working for a power components factory. And I would go between Elbląg and Warsaw back and forth, helping with the philosophical journal and then teaching English at this power components factory. It was a old Polish company, but it had been bought by a Swedish multinational called ABB. And I was teaching them English so they could communicate with their overlords, basically, their Swiss-Swedish overlords. This is a monument that's in Elbląg. It celebrates the freeing of Elbląg after World War II. And I just wanted to put it next to, I live in Texas right now. This is the San Jacinto Monument. This is in my hometown in Houston. This is the inside of the factory, so you can sort of see what this place looked like in Elbląg. And it's like really quite a beautiful building. Then I decided I took a job working for ABB Lang, which was in Budapest, Hungary. And I couldn't find a picture of the actual, I don't know, I feel like ABB pulled out of this concern and they just like got rid of all the pictures. I did find this, Lang was like an old factory that had been there for many, many years. This is a image that shows it like in the early 1900s. And of course it didn't look like this when I worked there, but somewhat like this. And I went to work for this turbine factory in Budapest. And this is where I went on Google early this morning, and this is where I lived. I don't know if you can see these like apartment buildings in the back. I lived in these communist housing block apartment buildings. And this is where I started to make art. I was kind of lonely and melancholic, and I had been moving around with no real plan or serious intention. And I was living in this building on the 17th floor, and I just was sad and alone, and I don't know, I just decided I was gonna start making art. Although I'd not gone to art school, I'd studied philosophy, and I'd never met an artist before. So I was just like all alone in that. Then I went to Korea, and so this was becoming like most of my 20s at this time. I chose these images because when I was on the airplane going to Korea, I saw this one advertisement for coffee, and it was like a famous actor in Korea called An Sung-gi, and I was like fell in love with An Sung-gi. I thought he was the most handsome, like coolest actor, and this is one of his movies called Cops. It was redone as a television show in more contemporary version. I thought that was really funny, so I added that. But my students did not think An Sung-gi was handsome. They always were telling me they could not understand like why I liked him so much. My Korean students, I think they just thought he was old. Anyway, so then I was living for a year in Suwon and a year in Seoul. Like at this point, I'm getting to be like 26, 27, 26 this time. And then I went to Lisbon, Portugal, and I got a job working for Portugal Telecom. So they had like all these, they didn't have like one, in Lisbon, they didn't have like one building. They had like lots of little buildings, and I would go around Lisbon teaching English to the Portugal Telecom employees. It's the only job that I ever was fired from. I mean, I've had plenty of jobs where I've been like really bad, like I think I should have been fired, but I always like managed to quit before I get fired. And that's why I have a little sort of sadness thinking about the Portugal Telephone Company, because it's like I was very nervous, and I was supposed to be teaching English, but I would be speaking so quickly, and it was such a nervous accent, or that I was really not a good English teacher. And so they fired me. So that is when I decided I would go to art school. And I had never taken art classes. And so I was sort of figuring out like what I should do. Like I didn't really know very much about it. But I had followed art, like I had like looked at art. I was always going to museums. I was always reading magazines and stuff. And I thought like, well, I should go study where like Mike Kelly, because I had this like sort of like great insecurity, but at the same time, I had this narcissism that was out of control. And I was just like, I should go study with Mike Kelly. And so I put together a portfolio and applied to Art Center. And that's where I sort of like when I was 30, I started with my first art classes as a graduate student at Art Center, like with no previous like sort of art background. Okay. That's a little bit, so I'm going to show you my work. Oops. I really wish I didn't have to show you my it's so crazy. This is how my brain feels. Okay. And slideshow and play. Okay. Just gonna let you read that for a second. So a very early piece I made as a graduate student. Now it's not moving. Oh, do I just press here? Okay. How do I go back? Okay, got it. I moved from Keynote to PowerPoint. So I was there. I didn't really have an art background. I wasn't sure like what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure like what I had gotten myself into. And this like culture seemed very different than what I was used to, although I was fascinated by it and really wanted to be a part of it. And I started to just layer like one single piece of wallpaper on the wall, and I would layer it over and over again. So I didn't just, it was me being able to make something, but not make something at the same time. So I would have all these like studio visits, and people would come in like, you know, Mike Kelly or Stephen Prina, and I'd discuss this, like the latest piece of wallpaper that had gone on the wall. And that went on for like 6 months, where I was just like changing this one piece of wallpaper. And everyone was thinking like, oh, is she ever gonna really make anything other than this? And at a certain point, the wallpaper just like became so thick and became so blocky that it peeled off the wall, almost like a corpse. And I put it into my garage and I let it mold, and then I cut it up and made this piece with it where I put this typographical face. It was like, I considered it like a neutral clown face, and I called it clown typeface. Sorry, it seems like I'm screaming. I don't think I have to scream at you. This is why I was fired from my job at Portugal Telecom, because I was screaming at the students. I get so nervous. Okay. Here it is reinstalled. I had a survey show at the Visual Art Center at UT Austin recently, and we reinstalled this piece. It's like, it held up pretty well. Like it's been, like I made it in 1999, and this was like 2020, I guess. Yeah. So it was like 20 years old, and it just like props up, right? And it's like molded wallpaper basically, but it's like, it was in really good condition, and we reinstalled it.
Can I like interrupt really quick and just ask a random question?
Yeah, for
about the
sure.
portfolio you use to apply to Art Center. You had this recording, I think, of you teaching.
No. It's interesting because there was this, like, it was very strange. This one, what I taught in Korea, I worked for this small school, and they would have the students reading these pronunciation practice. And what you see there in this picture is a picture of one of those pronunciation practice, a silk screen of one of those pronunciation practice sheets. And the whole school would be saying the same thing at the same time it would like be over, with the intercom. But no, I had this very, I had a friend who also worked for the Hagwon, the school. I had found there was this test. It was called the Sondi psychological test. So it's kind of like a Rorschach test, but it's faces, and you get like 8 faces, and one person's supposed to be a manic depressive, one person's supposed to be a manic depressive manic, one person's supposed to be a narcissist. And then the therapist says to you, like, who do you identify, who do you want to have a chat with? And I had this friend like be the psychologist and be like, who would you, he was from the South. And so he's like, who would you like? I won't do a Southern accent, but like, who do you want to have a chat with? And he did it in a very solicitous Southern accent, like he was a Southern used car salesman. And I asked another friend for a tape, and it was just like a regular cassette tape. And I put it on that cassette tape and sent it off as part of my portfolio. But then I didn't realize, like, I didn't check to see like what was on the tape later. And it was like, it was like the equivalent of Britney Spears or something. So it was like my art piece about this like complicated psychological test. And then it just like went into like the worst pop music. Okay. Whoa. Okay, so this was a second show I did at Richard Tejas in LA, like in 2002, I guess, 2003. My first show was in 2001. And this was called Analysandum. So I was thinking like the kingdom of analysis. And I was thinking this was like the desk between the psychologist and the patient, and that each one would be on one of the sides with the horns. And I was trying to imagine like what would be on the walls. And the the full name of the show was called Analysandum, the Office of Dr. Vital Brazil. And it was supposed to be like a psychologist's office. I also made a work. This was the Whitney in, I don't know, like 2005 or something. And here you see my piece. It was called Nightstand. I made it all out of Schechter sewing chests. Here I'm with a piece by Jay Hikes, and on behind my piece, you can see a painting by J.P. Monroe. And let me see if I can get a better picture. You can see it a little better here. I went into a woodworking program at junior college out in the like sort of east part of Los Angeles. And I got the dimensions and learned how to make Schechter sewing chests. And I made a lot of Schechter sewing chests. And then I think I was taking a green and green nightstand class, and I was taking a frame, like a kitchen cabinet making class at this junior college. And I think I was just like putting one class on the other. Like I was putting like the frames that we were making for the kitchen cabinets on top of the sewing chests. Were very, just like a kind of furniture like that was similar to it didn't look like the green and green nightstand we were making in class, but it was, I could do it because I had learned to make a green and green nightstand. The painting is a craft. I call her Craft Witch. It's almost like a self-portrait. And the attendants are photographs of the decorative sculptor Gustav Miklos, a bird he made from different perspectives. And this is called Nightstand. And then again, we reinstalled this piece at my survey show at the Visual Arts Center, and it was, we had more cramped space, so we had to like push in all the drawers. So when I showed this in New York, it was like all the drawers were like expanding outward, but here they were like sort of pushed in, and it was more compact. I use this character from Moomin Troll like often in my work. Her name is Little Mai, and I saw this chair. I was looking before I knew what Moomin Troll and Little Mai was, so it'd be like seeing a Snoopy chair or like a Mickey Mouse chair, and never had seen anything from Mickey Mouse. And so like the chair sort of existed for me before Little Mai existed for me. And I have a whole philosophy of her top bun. I gave a whole lecture on her top bun one time. And it's the first time I used it was a show in Kyoto. It was called the Snow White. When I get nervous, sometimes I stutter, and I was thinking about this like sort of stuttering that like where you're stuttering the wrong sound. Like it wasn't like the that or something. It was like the Snow White, like also I started putting like different paintings on top of the wallpaper. So I would have like these like big blocks of just cheap wallpaper that I could buy like super cheap in the Valley. And then I would put different paintings on top of them. And this was one of the paintings of Little Mai, and this was called Call Zone. I was just like thinking about this, like, this is so different because like now there's cell phones, but like, you know, like there used to be like this kind of, whether you would grab for the phone or not. And there's all the space between your hands and the phone, which you could stop like during, like now there's like really, you just like reach down into your pocket or something. But like at the time, I don't know. So this was called Call Zone. It was like this idea that like you had to like reach through to get to the phone. And then I had this show in Berlin, and I decided I wanted to use Little Mai again. And I got another Little Mai chair. This was like a found object. And I cut out and caned the back of the chair. So like turned her in. It was like, felt like very violent to me. Like it, like I feel like this is like the most violent piece I ever made. Like it just like cutting out her face, and then and it just felt like a serial killer or something. So yes, this was oops.
And Lisa, do you think you could explain a little bit more about like who Little Mai is or what she is?
Well, Little Mai is like a character in Moomin Troll comic strip. Do you know what it is, Martin?
Very vaguely.
Very vaguely.
Yeah.
She's like a character that is like creative, but like she's not like artistically creative, and she's not like scientifically creative. She's like something else, which I can't put my finger on, but that I identify with. Like I don't really think I'm like very artistic, but at the same time, like creativity is not scientific, but it's like this third thing, which I cannot totally identify. And I sort of identified it in this character. But the one important thing is that I was going through a Japanese interior design book, which was showing pictures of Stockholm children's rooms. So it was the Japanese publisher was called Judapam, and they were showing all these like beautiful children's rooms in Stockholm in this book. but it was all in Japanese. And I got to this one photo, and there was the chair, and I was like, this has to be something. Like, this is something. This chair is like amazing. Like, what is this chair? I'm gonna find this chair. I'm gonna do something with this chair. I became completely obsessed with the chair. And then I did find out that it was something, like that it did, exist to an entire world. It was, something that connected to an entire world. And so I consider the chair very different than Little Mai. Like the chair doesn't like stand in for Little Mai. It's related to Little Mai, but I call it Little Mai chair, and it has a completely different sort of ontological being than Little Mai does for me. Like, it is just like a different type of being. This is a piece. Oh, are we running out of time soon? Okay, I'll go. I'll talk about 2 more pieces and then we can wrap it up. This one is called Christmas Tea equals meeting, presented by Dialogue and Humanism, formerly Dialectics and Humanism. And I had taken, so it's a fence, and I had taken the Chinese Chippendale pattern that was at Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, and I had recreated that Monticello Chinese Chippendale pattern, and then I like sort of drew in the swastikas in that pattern. So it was like this. I mean, I feel like this piece makes much more sense now, like this kind of fascistic wall, but with your mind going in like all these different directions, into all these different symbols, into all these different connections where you can't like really settle on something. And at the time, I think that people just did not get this piece. I mean, I feel like now people sort of understand this piece a lot. The world we're living in now, people understand this piece a little more. Or I don't understand, but just like, it makes a little more sense, this time, at this moment, than any other moment. This is a piece I did, the third Little Mai piece. There were only 3, but I did it in Los Angeles at this gallery called my gallery, Christina Kite. And I made the shaker pegboard, but instead of using pegs, I used ovals. And then like, I just like, again, her face and shoved the oval through her face. I don't know. This is a piece I did for, we have a critic in LA, Bruce Hainley, who was very influential, and he was coming to Houston. He moved to Houston, he moved to my school, and we all, like, there were like 40 artists, and we all made a piece for Bruce when he was leaving LA. I think I was the only, everyone was saying it was called I can't remember what it was called, but everyone was saying goodbye. But I kind of sort of felt like I was saying hello, because he was moving to my town. And this has sound. So it's a little rat that's made out of tobacco, and there's a pole stuck in the rat's back, and then you hear this.
What do you think I am, a messenger boy?
What do you think I am, a messenger boy?
What do you think I am, a messenger boy?
A messenger boy?
Okay, so and that was an image from my survey show. And this is also another image from my survey show that I just had, like, in the last couple years. I think that's the last image. Nope. Tobacco camels. I did the same show where the second show I had Little Mai, where I cut her out. I made all of these camels out of real tobacco. I made a lot of little camels, and I made a lot of little cages for the camels, which I caned. This was a piece that Martin actually asked me to talk about. No one ever asked about this piece, so I thought this would be the last thing I talk about. It's this one here. This picture is like it's been reinstalled. Looks like an art fair or something, but it was originally shown in Vienna, and it was called Goose Fair. I was kind of obsessed with the way this book by Wittgenstein, Tractatus, had like no things in it. Like there were only 5 things in the whole book. I tried to remember what they were. Like they had a gramophone, an Easter lily, a ladder, uneven surface, and a live horse. I mean, in the entire book, the book is so abstract that there's like nothing else. Like even like if you're reading like Kant and Critique of Pure Reason, or you're reading like on his categorical imperative or something, there's always like murderers and doors and doorbells and closets, and there's all things like the things like kind of inhabit philosophy books, but this particular philosophy book only had 5 things. And so I thought, like, oh, they would have to dress, if they were like going to be in a play, they would have to dress up like each other. So there was an Easter lily and a gramophone, and I was like, oh, I'll dress the gramophone up like an Easter lily. But I could have done the opposite. I could have dressed, maybe I should do that, dress an Easter lily up like a gramophone. I kind of like that idea. I think I should make a costume for an Easter lily so they can be a gramophone. And yes, I studied with Chaim Steinbach at one point, and I was very careful not to make any shelf works because I have like a very, very kind of serious relationship to that work. And but this is like, I felt like I could make one shelf work in the shape of a cross. There are all these little shelves along the cross and Easter lilies on top of them. And so it's like the only shelf work I've ever made. Okay. And then I redid it in Houston in the backyard of my friend's house. Just going to show you these. Okay, that's it.
Well, thank you so much. That's amazing.
I just wanted to just like very briefly, do we have time that I can talk about Tiger just for 5 minutes or something?
Oh yeah, you got like 24 minutes really, plus, you know, give or take.
Okay, because I thought we needed time for questions. Okay. Oops. Okay. So I'm starting this organization in Houston. It's called Tiger, Texas Young Artist Resource. The Y and the G both come from young, which is a little odd, and it's hard. I have to explain it every time. This I just like shot really quickly, like on my lap in the airport in Minneapolis, but I'm gonna like use this somehow in the advertising for Tiger. And it's an organization to help for teen artists in Houston. So right now we're raising money for Lamar High School for after school workshops and for art materials. And I've put together like a box that has different artworks and different poems from different writers. And you buy this box for $500 and all the profits. I don't make any money. All the profits go to Tiger and to the Lamar High School students. But here's what's in the box. There's a wreath in the box by the Grim Wreather, Andy Alexander. There's a Garfield mug by Poppy Boy, Baby Boy, which is Max Melansky and Nancy Stella Soto. There's a resin postcard by Caroline Thomas, who I think was Martin's teacher at one point. Was she ever your teacher? There's a t-shirt by the company Cruise or Be Cruise, which is the artist Dean Samashima, who lives in Berlin. There's Discount Gargoyle Headquarters, which is a little sculpture made by Jonathan Roseman, Wyatt Lasky, and Jay Hikes, who are all Minneapolis artists. There's a pencil holder by the artist Will Fowler. And then there's a poem that I wrote when Mike Kelly died about a decade ago. And I'd never written a poem ever. And it's just like, I think this is sort of like pain of it all. Like, I just like wrote a poem and then I never wrote another poem. So I was like, oh, it's like very funny. Like I only wrote one poem in my life and this is that. But then it's interesting, in the last few weeks, I've started writing poetry a lot. Like I wrote like 40 pages. It's very weird to be in your mid-50s and then you just like suddenly write like 40 pages of poetry. It's just like the oddest thing in the world. It's like almost like a movie or something. But yes, so this is a poem by me. It was my only poem up until recently, but now I can't say that. Bruce Hainley has a new poem. Veronica Syrop, Anna Helm, who went to school with Martin. R, which is a kind of anonymous one. Christina Kite, which is my gallerist. Sabrina Tarasoff, who's a writer who lives in Paris. Tom Watson, who is the guitarist for Dick Watt and Red Crayola. And then the whole thing is going to be wrapped by Jillian Conrad, who is a sculpture professor at University of Houston. And it's like worth probably like thousands of dollars, but it costs like $500. It's like such a deal. And it all goes to a good cause. This is like Wreath by the Grim Wreather. So I just wanted to give you some idea of like the type of the artists that are in the box. So Andy Alexander, again, he goes by the name Grim Wreather. And this is a poster Andy did for, I think LACMA had this like poster project. This is a poster he designed for this poster project at LACMA. Fit in, don't fit in. I love this poster. Poppy Boy, Baby Boy, they make all sorts of ceramics. And for the box, they're gonna make Garfield mug. I know everyone wants a Garfield mug, but this is a dog dish that they did, just to give you an idea. Caroline Thomas made this resin postcard that's in the back with shells. It's made with shells and yarn and pink resin. And I just took a picture. It's something she gave me on my 50th birthday. And I just decided to, it's in my kitchen and I just like took a picture of it on the shelf in my kitchen. But there'll be a resin postcard from Caroline Thomas in this box. And then there'll be a t-shirt designed by Dean Samashima, Cruise or Be Cruise. And here's one of his t-shirts. Some of the boxes have this exact t-shirt. Some of them have a different t-shirt. And this is Leisha Del Ratio, who's a painter from LA, wearing the t-shirt, modeling it here for me. This will be in the box. It is from the Minneapolis artist. It's the Discount Gargoyle headquarters. And one of these will be in each box. And then the painter, Will Fowler, is going to make pencil holders. So if you can imagine like what kind of pencil holder this painter would make, and I think you want it. And so, yeah, that's the end. I just like, it's going to be April 2nd. It's called Church Bazaar. And it's here in Houston. And you can buy one of the boxes if you want. Again, like the entire amount, all the profits go to helping teenage artists in Houston. And you can write me or email me if you want to get one. It's a super good cause. Anyway. It is expensive. It is like $500, but it's worth it. Okay, I'm going to exit and I'm going to stop sharing. Ta-da! I'm done.
Thank you, Lisa. We have one question from Amy Hauft, who wants to know if you can talk more about the role of craft in your work.
Role of craft. Oh, that is, yeah, that's kind of funny that I'm mad at St. Louis because they took Amy away from Texas. You guys have the best director of your art school. So I think I'm a little angry with St. Louis. can you ask Amy to like ask like a specific question about craft? It just seems like such a sort of like a God question or something, like, you know, like, can you tell like the sort of talk more about art in your work or something? It's such a huge because I feel like I'm always like sort of like just like exploring the relationship of craft to art, and there's so much craft in my work. There's so much like weaving and caning, and which I all do myself, and like building shaker sewing chests and building shaker pegboards and stuff. So I have like for instance, the nightstand piece where I made the shaker sewing chests. I was thinking about how the shakers, like how they just sort of divided up, like either they're really repressed, like they're not having sex, right? That's why they die out. And they are making this beautiful furniture, but then they're like having like these like ecstatic moments on the weekends, like when they are speaking in tongues and stuff. And so I was thinking like, oh, that's so interesting. I wonder if I could make the furniture, like the furniture was speaking in tongues. And that's how I came up with Nightstand. Yeah. Does that answer that's something about craft?
Amy was saying she can't find a way to be audible, but I think that's a sufficient answer in my opinion.
Hey. Hi, Amy.
I was wondering, I guess personally, or just after you talking about the little my, like you've got these sort of like almost like elegant acts of violence that occur in your work that are really interesting. I'm thinking particularly of these, you were working with window blinds at one point, and you told me that you became frustrated to the point that you just stomped on it, but that ended up becoming like a piece or sort of like a side subsidiary piece like in your practice. And I'm just wondering more about like events and occurrences like that and how they sort of work their way into your work and like have a purpose.
I think that's very rare in my work. It's so funny, like you went straight for that, because like, that I even mentioned that to you, because like I mean, I was very methodical about those works. Like these like cheap, I was thinking about like someone who was kind of alone in their house and that they couldn't, they were kind of afraid to go out or something, and so they had to like started making artwork like in their house, and they like took down their cheap Levallois blinds, and then they fanned them out and put colored wax in them. And it's like when I make those pieces, those wax pieces, it's very, you know, I have to make a mold. It was supposed to look like someone had just like ripped down their blinds and poured wax in between the Levallois slats. But when I make them, it's very methodical. Like I have to have like a little mold. I think about the colors a lot. I think about them, and there's not like I don't have like this kind of like where expressivity, like this violent moment, like that is probably the only, you just kind of identified probably the only moment in my work that happened or something, you know, like I'm just not, even if I'm dealing with that very topic as like if I'm dealing with it as a topic, it's done in this really like overly intellectualized way, like the nightstand, right? Like I was dealing with that exact problem, the idea that like expressivity connected to you know, losing control and violence, and then like how would you do that making furniture? And I couldn't do it. Like it's like those sewing chests like took me like a year and a half to I had never worked in wood really, except I had made one Star of David, and it took me forever to learn how to use the machines and to learn how to make that stuff. And to sort of like, so it was important to me to make it myself.
We've got one anonymous question.
Anonymous gets scary.
Could you talk more about the geometry and patterns in your work? And is that a form of subject matter for you?
Yes, I do think that it is. Yes, I do think that sort of, I mean, that goes through all of my work, that there is this decoration. Okay, I know how I can explain it. When I was younger, I was like Xeroxing something at Kinko's, and this man comes up to me and he said, "Oh, that looks like those kind of tests that you take, psychological or he didn't say psychological tests, because tests you take." And I said, "You mean Rorschach?" And he said, it wasn't a Rorschach what I was copying, and it was just like someone who worked at Kinko's. And I said, he said, "Yeah, I think that's what it's called." I thought it was funny he didn't know the word Rorschach test, and then he said, "Yeah, they made me take that at IBM when I was applying for a job, and I didn't answer right, and I didn't get the job." This is just like some random person like working at Kinko's, that's just like, I'm the customer and they're the, and I said, "Wow, that's so weird." And he said, "Yes, I saw," he said he saw like, and it was so weird. He said he saw an amoeba or something, like, or when he should have been seeing like some sort of decorative element. I don't know, this sounds so odd. Like he Paisley, he said he should have seen a Paisley, but he saw, how do you say it? Parmisium? Is that how you say it? That, you don't know. Anyway, and I thought, oh, I said to him, I said, "Oh, that's such a weird, that's number one, is so weird you've come up to me. Number two, is so weird you're talking about like a test you took at IBM, like, you know, decades ago. And number three, they were like, you chose the decorative part so that they think that you're not like going to be good for this job. But if you had chose the scientific, you would be good for that job." Anyway, I feel like that is like encapsulates my work, like this like relationship between like this kind of where the decorative becomes scientific and the scientific becomes the decorative, like where it's like that sort of moment when you have to make that choice. I think that didn't make any sense at all, but it was kind of an interesting story for me, at least.
I mean, you know, I think it's better when things don't make sense. I'm just interested.
That made no sense.
How that guy applying for an IBM job decided Kinko's would be the next best thing.
Well, that was many years later. And this was.
So another question in the chat: do you have any strict parameters for the making process of your work that you're conscious of? And are they changing between works or consistent throughout the years?
I don't think that anyone should. I do not have strict parameters at all. I will like do anything and I'll change in any way, and I'll work in any particular way. Like I don't think that you should. I mean, for me personally, I don't think anyone. I love parameters. Oops, sorry. I love parameters like in other people's work, and I see, oh my Lord, I really apologize. I don't know how to turn this off. Okay. But like, I don't think that I have any, like, I think I work differently in different shows, and I'm always willing to like try like a different method. And I always feel like I'm going to get like some secret method to, like, you hear about this, like this one time, like Dieter wrote, like he was so predisposed to being like very like, just has this design aesthetic that was so beautiful, and he thought it was hurting him as a fine artist. So he would like make art when he had like 102 temperatures, like, so he wouldn't like make his art so beautiful, you know? And I sort of like that idea. Like I always am trying to come up with like things like that, like, oh, I'm going to make art when I have 102 temperature. And I always feel like I'm going to come across like this, like this method, this technology, but the technology is going to be like, make it when you have the flu. Anyway.
Another question. Yeah. Well, it's about your tobacco camels, and
Oh yeah.
somebody
Cool.
wondering if you could elaborate on the use of that in your sculptures. And I feel like one time you were telling me at one point that you thought that was like the perfect, like timeless sculpture or something, like it could, you were
never
saying,
talk about my work that way.
or not timeless maybe, but just
I would
something
never
that
be
can
like, my
always,
work, I made the timeless sculpture. It is timeless. It would last forever. Oh, timeless in the sense that like you can keep putting tobacco on it.
yeah.
Yeah, that way. Okay. It sounded like you were saying like, yes, it is. Sorry, Martin, that was my mistake. Not that it would last forever and be like a great artwork or something, but that it would last forever in that you could keep putting tobacco on it. Yes, I had to go to my mother-in-law's often, and I would always be trying to find out things to do. And one of the things was I would go to the museum at the R.J. Reynolds headquarters, and in the R.J. Reynolds headquarters, there was a sculpture, and it was covered in plastic, so you couldn't see it. And I asked them, like, what is it? And they said it was a tobacco camel. So like I could kind of see the outline of it. I knew like it existed, and I thought, like, oh, I have to make a tobacco camel, whatever, like what I think is underneath that tarp. In that, I could kind of see through the tarp a little bit. And it was like just like a fuzzy plastic. And so then I went to the taxidermist in LA, and I had a pack of Camel cigarettes, and I just like kind of walked in off the street and said, can you make a taxidermy form for the Camel cigarette camel? And then I just put a bunch of tobacco on it. And with my assistant at the time was Patrick Jackson, who's also an amazing artist. And he was trying to quit smoking at the time. And it's like the job I gave him was like putting tobacco on the camel, like gluing it on. It was like horrible of me. But he did quit smoking.
Well, that's good of Patrick.
That's good. Oh, Patrick's another one of your teachers.
Yeah.
Your teachers are coming up a lot.
It's a circle, I think.
Circle.
Let me see if there's any more. Well, just going back, I guess, similar to your geometric patterns, but someone's wondering about or Amy is, oh my gosh, about the typographic symbols, the swastikas, the Star of David, bow, etc.
Mm-hmm. Like when I first started using the type like that, the face, I'll talk about the face on that initial originary sculpture, clown type face, where I had just like went and made this neutral clown face, and it, you know, it looks like it was pre-emoticon, right? Like that didn't. I mean, I think that they did exist, but like we didn't have, it's pre-email. I got like email in like 2003 or something. I made that in 1999. So I was looking at a lot of concrete poetry at the Getty. I was looking at a lot of just like typographical artwork, brotars. I was looking, it was like very, but it's funny because it like sort of ended up being this like, you know, something like emoji or something, right? Like this kind of like, there was all this like pathetic molded wallpaper. It was how I sort of felt as a person. And then I thought I could trump it by just like putting on this typographical face. And later I think that that's like kind of interesting, like this, like, it is like connected to emojis or something, like this kind of like, it just like trumps all other expressivity or something. You just like stick it on and then you just become that thing. So that was like the first time I started using typographical like elements in my work. I also was like obsessed with this painter, Lisa Lapinski, and I would remake Lapinski's paintings as typographical faces, as emoticons, and made wallpaper out of that. There we go.
Going back to like what you were saying about the camel and sort of like only knowing a little bit about it. Well, because you brought up Banana Man to me so many times and how that was made, like not really knowing who Banana Man was. Is there any strange similarity in that sort of like way of thinking?
I don't know. That's interesting. So for people who don't know Banana Man, that's an early video by Mike Kelly, and he had based, there's like a character on Captain Kangaroo, which is called Banana Man, and he decided he was going to make a video about him, but without actually, just from the descriptions of his friends of Banana Man, but not actually ever seeing it. So I can kind of see like this, like, I don't know, a sort of weird connection about like just like walking in with like a, I don't know, it doesn't seem exactly related to it, but like a sort of, that there's a game going on in a way that has to do with, I guess in my case, it's like giving up like direction, right? Like just handing them the pack of cigarettes. And in Mike's case, it's just like not letting the what it's referencing like take over. Like all you've heard is like this like sort of myths about this one character, and then you just like take it over yourself. So in a way, it's like sort of opposite.
Cool. And then we just got one more question before we wrap up, and it's from Carmen Colangelo, the dean of our school. He wants to know how the move to Houston and teaching at Rice has changed your art and creative practice.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like Texas is getting, you know, such a bad rap right now, and of course it deserves it. But I love Texas. Like I just like sort of love it here, and I feel it's been like so good for me. Like I don't think I would have ever done something like Tiger, like in LA or something. You know, I came up in the LA art world, and all my teachers were from LA, and my, you know, fellow artists and my students. And so like, I'm really like, I think I'm still like kind of even associated with LA, and I'm trying to like more and more get involved in the Houston art world and what's happening here. I mean, not the Houston art world, but like just Houston and Houston artists. And I don't know, it's been nothing but positive for me to be here. I love teaching at Rice, and I love Houston is just Houston is like one of the most diverse cities in the entire country. It's like such an exciting place right now.
Cool. Okay, and then like one more thing, just really quick before wrapping up. Those back to the camels.
Okay.
Is there like an overpowering smell of tobacco in the room when you're around those things?
Yes, like you walk into the gallery and it just like smells like tobacco. Like it's completely, I mean, it starts fading as the exhibition goes on. And but at the beginning, it's like the whole show smells like tobacco. Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for this talk. It's been like an amazing journey. Taking us all around the world, kind of. And yeah, it's great to have you. And a lot of us grad students are looking really forward to having you at the studio visits.
Oh, I can't wait to see your work, everybody. I'm very excited. It's tomorrow morning, right?
Yes, I think it's starting at 9.
Okay. Thank you so much. And hi, Amy. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And yeah, that's it. I don't really know who takes over at this point, but thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your